Hi, my name is Eugene from Profilm. Today I want to show you how to do the installation for EXW for our PET based windscreen protection film. First, what we have to do is we have to remove the wiper arms and the wipers by unscrewing the wipers from the scuttle panel. Remove the scuttle panel and all the rubbers around the windscreen. So to remove the wipers, you will need a wiper pulling tool. In some cases, you can push down on the wipers and the wipers will pop loose. So we'll try that first, and if that doesn't work, we'll use the wiper puller. Okay, so we're taking off the scuttle panel. We've got a couple of screws to come off here, a couple of clips to come off here. Every car is different. You're going to have to check how that gets removed before you start doing this. For this one, it's just a quarter turn to release the clip. Lift the panel off and then do the same on these clips. Now we're going to take off the main scuttle panel piece. Two small clips on the outside to remove. This one here. Be extremely careful when removing these clips not to catch paintwork. Generally very easy to take out if you're using the correct tools. Okay, so we're going to remove the cover that sits on the side of the windscreen. So these generally just clip off. Just push fingers into them carefully. Don't force. Just allow it to unclip. That will release the panel from the scuttle panel, and that will also release the scuttle panel from the side. Check that you haven't left any clips on this piece as this, and if you have, remove that, put it back into position before you put the cover back on. So what we want to do next is clean inside these channels. You can see there's a lot of dust around here. We have to make sure all that dust is removed. All the channels are perfectly clean before we start any of our processes in installing our film. So just washing out the channel. It's just a quick rough spray. It's good if you have a high pressure sprayer with a bit of power behind it, so you can wash out most of the dirt. We're also going to follow this up with our brush. Make sure we loosen up all the dirt inside there. Detailer's brush, some water, loosen up all the dirt inside there. Okay, so the next step is we've got a scraper blade here, we've got a scouring pad. Scraper blade is intended for when you have an older car, you want to remove really hard, stuck down, maybe bug splatter or dirt. And then the scouring pad is to follow that up and kind of just dislodge anything that you might have missed, any small things around the edges especially. It's quite soft, it's made of nylon, so it's not going to damage anything. Still keep clear of the paint and stay on the glass with this. Obviously with the blade, I'm going to use that in one direction, push down, never flip the blade over, that'll cause scratches on the glass. So you're going to go in one direction, lift the blade from the glass, the next swipe, overlapping swipes until you've cleaned the entire windscreen. It's very important to overlap each piece so that you don't miss any areas on the glass. Remember, as you're pushing down on the glass, this side of the blade, you flip it over, that side will scratch the glass. So you always use the same side. If you need to, just replace the blade rather than flipping it over. And then obviously, as you can see, a swipe through, lift up, go back, and then swipe through again by pressing down, but never reverse, because when you reverse, you pull the dirt back, and again, that can cause scratches. Around the edges goes a little bit slower. You want to get right out to the edge, but again, you don't want to be damaging paintwork or rubber gaskets. Now, in some cases, you will have rubber gaskets that can't be removed. So what you'll have to do with that is trim the film short of that rubber gasket. That's usually for older cars, vintage cars. What you do is you cut it 1 millimeter inside the edge of the glass. It's quite easy to do, and it'll be the same process as what we'll do at the bottom edge of the glass, because the scuttle panel sits over that edge, so we don't have to go right and shave it on the glass. So I'll show you how to trim that just inside that edge. Just following with my finger in the front there, on top of the blade. Obviously that'll help me when I get to the top so it bumps against the roof and I don't push the blade into the roof. You want to be doing this slowly, because if your finger gets in between the roof and the blade, you will be cutting yourself. So please take care. Right, so next we're going to use the nylon scrub pad. We're just going to really scrub that windscreen very well. Again, taking care not to go over the painted edges. If you think that you are going to cause damage on the painted edges, best to tape them down, close them up before you start this. This car is fairly open, so I'm sure that I don't need that covered, but you can easily tape the area around the windscreen closed. So quite a vigorous scrub. Do the center section first. When I get to the edges, slower edges will go quite quick and rough, but when I get to the side, a little bit more focused, push my thumb into the scrub pad, really want to scrub off the dirt from that edge. And the same at the top. This is the area where you're going to be the most careful. It means it's most likely to have some dirt stuck there. So after the scrub, wet the glass again. You just wash most of what you've scrubbed off loose, wash that off, and then your rubber blade, just wipe the windscreen clean. Right, start at the top, overlapping dry and wet areas, move that dirt towards the bottom so it flows down with gravity. Again, when you get to the edges, take care not to scratch or damage. Wipe it down with a microfiber towel, and then we're going to give it a decent inspection to make sure we don't have any heavy chips or slight cracks that could cause further cracking when we're doing our installation. Little marks. Sometimes you'll have small chips with older cars. As long as there's no cracks next to those chips, it'll be okay. If you do see it, report it to your customer and indicate to them if you put pressure on that, there's a risk that it could crack. In most cases, fine chips like these are okay. You should be able to install without any risk to damage. Check the edges especially. This windscreen looks pretty good. Small chips here and there. There's a car that's been used before, but this is going to be fine for our window film installation. We're going to measure the length and the width. EXW4 is a window film, so that means we have to cut the film in the machine direction, basically place it onto the glass. You cannot cut across the film because you won't be able to heat form it. So we measure the width, go with 1.5, and then we're going to go with the height here. Keep an eye on the dip here, so you're going to go for the highest point here, overlap it by about 1 inch. Same at the bottom, that's going to be about 900, we'll make it 95, 950. So handling a windscreen protection film, it's extremely important to always remember to roll your film tightly onto the core. Give it at least 3 tape marks across when you're taping it down, and what you really want to make sure of is that the film is rolled very tightly without any tunneling or bubbling. So when you open the film again, roll off what you need, retighten it, and then put it back in your box, taping it up 3 or 5 times across the width of the film. So you can place your measuring tape on the side of your box, pull out the length you require, which we know is 1.5. We're going to pull our film out, and then we'll do a cross cut with our snitty. Remember to pull the film over the core, over the roll, and then over the box. Never against the box, because you'll put tension on the film and potentially cause creases or damages, especially on the EXW4. Pull it up, drop it down, give it a little check. Do you have enough? If not, lift it up again, pull it out a little bit further. Once you've got your ideal length, we're going to roll this back. Take care not to squash the film too much, cause creases or marks on the film. Take the snitty, hold your film down, place the snitty in on one side. Once you've got your film from the roll, you want to retighten this. The film should never be left loose, even just to install the front windscreen. You want to do this before you start your installation. So we'll remove our tape here, we'll hold on to the film slightly, and we're going to pull it back to make sure it's really tight. Lift it out the side, pull the piece out, hold on to the film, then put your fingers inside and just roll back on that. Make sure the film's really tight, hold it down, place it back into the box, and then take your tape, stick it down in the middle first. The middle is enough to hold it for you to place it back into the box. Then make sure you secure it by sticking down the sides. If you're going to store the film for a long period of time, put another 2 pieces of tape in between the center and sides. Close the box, put that away. Now that we've removed all the panels from the car, exposed the edges of the glass, and we've cleaned the glass thoroughly, we are going to put soap haze over the glass. You can use Dove soap, or you could use furniture polish, or you could use tumble dryer sheets. All of those will work. The idea is get your cloth wet, get some of the soap into the cloth, and allow that to kind of seep into the cloth. And as you're rubbing on the windscreen, it creates a soapy layer over the windscreen, which will then allow the film to slide on the windscreen. You really don't want the film to stick on the windscreen, so you put this on so that when you're heating up the film and you're heat forming the film, it slides and it moves when it's under pressure and it's under heat. Make sure you cover the entire windscreen with the soap. We allow this to dry because we want to have that film heat up really, really, really hot when we're shaping it. And if there's any water in between the film and the glass, that'll basically cool the film down. We don't want that to happen. So after that, we're going to create our standard H pattern as we do for back windows, but we'll leave the rest of the soapy haze for the film to kind of move on to dry so we can get the most heat into the film. Okay, so what you can see here is the backing liner on the inside and then the film on the outside, and we want to be shaping the film on the outside. So basically the film is going to be facing us when we're heat forming this film. So we'll unroll it, but before we unroll it, I'm going to make an H pattern on the windscreen and then lay the film over that with the liner against the glass, the SR coating facing us. So liner against the glass and film facing us. Right, once you've got your film on the glass, make sure you've got it evenly spaced. Ensure the film's running straight because you're going to be heat forming. And you want to be forming in a straight line, 90 degrees towards the side. Make sure you don't get any creases. That's going to make it the easiest for you. For this film and cutting on this film, we're going to be using 45-degree stainless steel blade. And the reason for that is because we have to cut through this film in some cases, and that can cause scratches on the glass when we're using a carbon blade. So take care when you're using a stainless steel blade. Even if you press too hard, you might scratch the glass. What I'm going to do now is just trim the sides and the bottom slightly longer than the edges. We're going to leave the top edge in place so that we can get rid of the fingers easier, and then we're going to start the heat forming. Okay, so the film needs to slide under. Now, tendency is just to push it in, which you can do, but you've got to be careful because you can crease the film. Sometimes better to just lift the film slightly, let it fall in there, and then move it into position, which will allow the film to seat properly. There's no force, getting the film into position, which means no crease marks, no damage to the film. But if you do this, it's very easy to leave edges exposed, so make sure you've got all the edges covered at the bottom and the sides. Obviously, we've left it long at the top, so you'll be able to see it. Then we're going to check this side. Looks like we're well covered here. I'm going to trim off a little bit here. That's all covered. That's pretty good. And as you can see, that H pattern is kind of drying up, but don't worry about that. You can always put some water back in under the film after we've set our film. So film is ready for heat forming. I'm just going to make sure my H pattern is wet and showing nicely, and then switch the heat gun on, start the heat forming. So the H is basically there to push the film into the sides, and obviously to allow the film, to split from top to bottom so that your fingers don't touch one another. And obviously on the side, you're doing that so you can keep the side flat and straighten up your fingers 90 degrees to the side, top and bottom, and that allows an easy heat form. Now heat forming, there's many different ways to do it. The best way in my opinion is the dry heat form, which is what we're doing here. Simply the wet part here is just to hold the film into position, but the dry part is the rest of the film lands on the glass dry, which allows it to take the shape of the glass easier. As you're heating it up, it warms up, it softens, it shrinks, it touches the glass, then cools and takes the shape of the glass. Okay, so just to repeat, we've set the film up, film's on top, this is the SR coat, this is how the film will be installed, face up, the liner is against the glass and we're heat forming on top of the film on the SR coat. I'm using a felt edged squeegee. This squeegee will allow me to put enough force onto the film. Because there's a felt tip on the edge of the squeegee, it'll allow for the squeegee to run over the SR without scratching. Just ensure your squeegee is in good condition. There's no dirt or sand on that edge because then you can cause scratches. But the coating on EXW4 is quite strong, so you shouldn't see any scratches. Okay, heat forming, create your H pattern. We're going to start heating from the one side towards the middle, starting at the top, then the other side towards the middle, and basically meeting in the middle. You don't want your film necessarily to be molded to the outside. When we start pushing out the film, we'll go from the middle towards the outside after the heat form. So I'll do the heat form first, and then after the heat form, I'll do the pushing out of the excess bubbles and film. At the bottom, we're going to do exactly the same thing. Heat form from the outside to the inside, outside to the inside. And then when we squeege the film out, we're still heating. We'll squeege from the inside to the outside to spread the film evenly over the glass. Now, in some cases, you're going to have a really curved windscreen. You're going to have very big fingers. And what you're going to have to do is lift your film halfway up the windscreen, put your H pattern quite high so you'll have a little H at the top, and then mold the bottom section of the windscreen whilst it's sitting up here. Mold that section. Then you move it down and you follow this step again. Or you could do it the other way around, where you move the top section down first, mold it, as in the case maybe with Teslas, mold the top piece first over this lesser curved section of glass, move that whole piece of film up again, and then create an H pattern again, and then mold that again. So the initial mold will allow you to get your second mold quicker, easier, without any damage. We won't be needing that today though. So I'm going to start with the heat forming. I won't be using the squeegee at this point, just heat form. I'll tug on the back edge of this film as I'm heating to ensure that the film moves in the correct position. And what we want to see is like a zigzag effect. We want to get that all the way to that edge of the windscreen. We'll do the top edge, and once we've done the top section, I'll start squeeging that out from the center with the heat gun on that and work towards the corner, and we'll see how that looks after we've done that. So you take the heat gun, as soon as you see the film kind of moving, that's when you want to start the circular motion with the heat gun. Now at the moment I don't have to move it, but the idea is use your finger at the top of the film, you kind of pull at it and straighten the fingers in order to not crease the film. EXW4, it's entry-level safety, so the thickness is 4 mil, 100 microns, and that means that the heat forming is not as easy as it normally would be with a thinner film. This film also has a hydrophobic coating on it, quite a hard coating as well, and the reason for that is obviously to protect against stone chips, but also to allow it for water beading and to give you great optical clarity for day and night conditions. So as you can see, I haven't used the card yet. I'm just heating the film up. Just shape the film without putting any pressure. So this takes out the risk of creasing the film. Now I can see there's a little bit of molding required there. There's a little bit of molding required there still. So I'm going to go slowly over this areas. And if I can see that the film gets too hot, I'll stop and move on to the next section. I can always come back. Question is, how hot should your heat gun be? The heat gun should be at top heat, always highest heat, which is generally 600 degrees Celsius. And what you want is about 10 centimeters from the glass, and you move the heat gun a lot. So basically you're controlling how much heat you put in one spot. But when you apply heat, you want that heat to actually make a difference and actually, change how the film looks and actually shrink and shape the film. So you don't want to just go on a low heat and temper the film and harden the film. You want high heat, so you're actually shaping the film. So now we've done the initial heat form. What we're going to do next is we're going to start pushing out the film from the center and come out towards the side. And I'll use the heat gun just to follow my felt tip squeegee. All right, so there's the squeegee, heat. We're going to do little bits at a time. You want to see that the film goes flat onto the windscreen now. Now that the film's been heat formed, we're going to trim the film down. We're going to leave a little bit of the film overlapping the edge of the glass. We're going to install it like that, and we'll do our final trim once the film's all squeeged out and down. Now the reason why we do that is because if you trim the film now and you install it like that, what you get is little white edges forming all around the edges because you're cutting through the film onto the glass. Now in some areas, like the bottom of the windscreen, in this case on this car, and the sides of the windscreen where you have overlapping rubber gaskets that cover up the windscreen, you're going to give it a gap anyways. So we can trim those down now, but at the top edge we'll leave it slightly long so that we can basically shave it on that edge of that glass and you can't see where the film ends. Cutting in between the glass and the roof. And again, you need to be extremely careful when you're doing this, not to cut the paint or the panels. Try not to use too much force. As I said, the rubber gaskets will cover that up, so it doesn't have to be perfect. It is going to be covered, but we want to still do it very neatly. Now in the case where you have rubber gaskets that are not removable, it's going to make your installation a little bit harder. And what you're going to have to do with that is you're going to have to trim 1 millimeter all the way inside that gasket around the window. And then you're going to have to accept that in some cases it's going to be difficult and you won't get a perfect alignment and maybe a little white edge. So take care when you're doing that. Make sure you push the film all the way against the gasket and then use a card and run the blade next to the card. Try and keep your blade as sharp as possible when you're doing that. If you don't, more of those white edges will show. All right, now that our film's molded, cut down, we're ready to clean the glass on the outside, and then we're going to do our installation. We'll place this on the peel board, peel the backing away, and then put our film on and squeegee it out. Before placing your film on the peel board, it's recommended to clean your peel board thoroughly so you don't get unnecessary dust or dirt rolling onto the film when you're removing the backing sheet. Okay, so float the film onto the window, wet the film, and then we're going to use a Blue Max to squeegee out all the water. We're going to have to do that 3 times over. Make sure we get all of the water out from underneath the film. Make sure the edges are covered. If not, adjust the film until it is. And then what you want to do is separate the left and the right sides. Right, you're going to do the top side first, obviously because dirt can run in from the top. You don't want that to happen. Right, you cross over. Now remember when we did the heat forming, we did this in a similar way. We worked our way out towards the side, overlap the dry and the wet areas. You see that there's little fingers forming. Don't keep on squeegeeing, just give it a second to settle. Put some water in there, heat it up with the heat gun and squeegee it out. So this is the initial pass. I still have to come over this again. We're going to go and follow where we've just squeeged. The idea with this is to get all the water out from underneath the film. At this point you want to be checking that you're not getting white streaks because it could be water that's stuck under the film that's running down and causing a streak. If it is doing that, that's fine. Just lift an edge, push some water in from the edge, push that water over the white streak and back out and it will clear it. what you want to do is take a heat gun, make a hard squeegee like a gold card, put it inside a towel so that when you push that out, it basically holds. Start on the inside, work your way towards the outside so that the film can spread over across to the corner. Make sure the heat gun is at the highest temperature before you start heating. Shave the film on the edge. This top edge is going to be visible, so we have to do this very nicely. Once this is trimmed back, it will also allow those little fingers to settle down. And just put your heat gun over that edge. It seals it and there's no white edges visible. A little bit of heat will sort it out. Let's do the other side. I'm going to do the final trim at the bottom edge now. I'm going to leave a little gap there so the scuttle panel can slide over that without pushing the film up. Get the edge nice and sealed. Obviously now that we've trimmed it back slightly, it'll sit a little bit more flush. It'll be a little bit less visible. Some soap solution on the film. I'm going to wipe that down. Clean the windscreen thoroughly. Obviously always inspect the windscreen for dust, marks, creases. Replace the film if required. Fix the issues that are needed. And that is how you install EXW4 PET windscreen protection film. Thank you.